BOOTCAMP. My name is Esther Elkos, and I'm the chair of Career Development and Networking Programs at the American Marketing Association, New York. First of all, we would like to thank our premier partner, Green Book, a leading voice in the market research and consumer insight space, for supporting us year-round. As you may know, AMA New York thrives in the center of the world's most influential business city, raising the profile of marketing, providing professional development and networking opportunities, and serving as a resource of marketing industry events and news. At AMA New York, we work every day to inspire, support, and celebrate brilliance in marketing. As a member, you have access to the most relevant and compelling knowledge base of data, tools, and people. For those of you who are not members yet, I invite you to join this dynamic organization to access essential resources in our library of how-to, benchmarking data, interactive tools, and best practices. Expand your network and knowledge through a full schedule of events around marketing skills, career readiness, and emerging trends. Network among your peers and connect with leaders who help shape the future of marketing, and elevate your leadership profile by volunteering, providing expertise, and mentoring. As I mentioned, we have a plethora of events coming up in the next month, so make sure to check out our website and follow us on social media to stay tuned. As a recap of the next events, on February 25th, join Lisa for Rethinking Marketing in 2021 to learn new strategies based on leading industry research and business case studies. On March 4th, a panel of experts will discuss the importance of marketing to drive growth for startups, followed by a networking session with the panelists. And on March 11th, tune in and learn how Jordana navigates localization for rubber, ensuring that content is on brand and culturally relevant to their end users. If you're interested in joining us, you can check out our website. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat and Austin will answer any questions you may have. And now I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Austin Belcak, founder of CultivatedCulture.com, where he helps people land jobs they love without traditional experience and without applying online. Austin's job search system stems from his personal experience transitioning from a new grad with a biology degree at 2.58 GPA and a job in healthcare to landing interviews and offers at Microsoft, Google, and Twitter, among others. Austin, please take it away.
Thanks, Esther. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining. I'm just going to fire up the screen share here so that we have that going. And then I'm going to fire up the chat as well. But I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. It's obviously a little bit of an interesting time for all of us. So we're sending good vibes from the New York area to all of you wherever you're at. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out today. So basically, as Esther mentioned, my whole gig is teaching people how to land jobs they love without applying online. And that can seem like a little bit of a foreign concept, maybe something that's too good to be true on the surface, because I think a lot of us spend a lot of time submitting online applications and we don't always see the results that we hope for. So the whole goal today is to give you all a system that you can go out and execute to not just get in the door with whatever company decides to take a chance on you, but actually allow you to create a list of companies you're excited about, pick and choose where you land interviews, pick and choose where you land offers, and help you stand out from a sea of applicants that's only become larger and more competitive over the last 12 months or so. So I have the chat here right next to me. This is meant to be a bit of an interactive session. So as I go through, if anybody has any questions about stuff I'm talking about, if you want to add your own thoughts or whatever, feel free to drop it into the chat here. I see Eugene's already dropped his LinkedIn, which is great. This is an awesome place to connect. And sometimes those warm connections, those loose connections can be some of the best. So feel free to chime in. Don't be shy. And with that, we can jump on in. So I think the first place and the easiest place to start is, who the heck I am and why I'm even qualified to talk about any of this stuff. So For 5 years, between 2015 and 2020, I worked at Microsoft as a director of partnerships in New York City. And during that time, I was promoted 3 times at Microsoft. But when I got that job there, I'd come from a pretty non-traditional background. So I was a recent grad. I had a biology degree, not related to tech. I had terrible grades. And I made this transition from, that space and non-traditional background to landing interviews and offers at Microsoft, Google, and Twitter. And so that system that I used is the one we're going to talk about today. But it's sort of the one that started my whole business. So a lot of people came and asked me, how I got in the door at Microsoft after being such a terrible student and not being very motivated. And I decided to share my learnings in a blog post back in 2016. And it really took off. So we got, really good response. And that's only grown to 750,000 people now over the last 5-6 years or so. So basically that's our community. We have 750,000 job seekers that are using our tools, that are using the system, that have gone on to get jobs at some pretty amazing places. And the strategies that we teach have been featured in a couple of the publications that you see below here. So most importantly, it's not really what I've done or about me, but more so what we've helped other people do. So we've helped folks from new grads all the way up to the C-level and all over the world. I think we've hit 6 continents. I think the only one we're missing is Antarctica. We've helped people land jobs at some pretty amazing places. And these are just a few of them here. So whatever you're looking to do, whether it's public sector, private sector, whether it's international, domestic, whether it's, consulting or tech or finance or healthcare or anything else, we've probably helped somebody get a job at a company that fits those criteria using this system. So this is where we're at now. And it all sounds great, right? Working at Microsoft, getting the door at Google and Twitter and a bunch of other places. We have this amazing community. But I think it's important to provide some context. So it hasn't always been this way. I was really, really lost when I started my career. So if we rewind back to even when I was like 4 or 5 years old, my parents asked me the same thing that many of our parents ask us, which is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And when we're super young, you can answer with whatever you want. You can be an NFL quarterback, you can be an astronaut, you can cure cancer, you can do anything. And you get a resounding, just flood of support. Everybody's telling you like, yes, like you can do anything that you put your mind to. But as we get older, that question persists and the scope of acceptable answers really narrows, right? Like we want to be a writer and that's cool when we're 5, but when we're 25, people are telling us, well, you're not going to make any money doing that. Why don't you try to be more realistic? And we sort of run into these barriers, but those same people, they don't give us the tools that we need to explore what else is out there. So I fell into that same trap. Like many of the people who have gone through that same process, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I basically landed on doctor because it was a familiar career and it made my parents and their friends and my teachers, nod with approval and smile. So that's what I set my sights on. And then I got to college and I immediately failed chemistry 101, like introductory. And that was one of the first courses I took. Then the following semester in the spring, I failed French. So I'm coming out of freshman year with like a 2.6 something GPA, like a C minus GPA. And there just aren't many medical schools bringing in doctors who just suck at science that much. That's just not going to happen. So I had to find a different path. And I was basically looking at 2, I could slack off and enjoy college and not really try very hard, or I could go through this painful process of exploration and finding something new. So I chose the path of least resistance and I did basically nothing for the next 4 years. I coasted through class. I didn't really study. And I ended up graduating with a 2.57 GPA, a degree in biology, and only 1 job offer because I had only applied to and interviewed at 1 single company. That was it. I didn't apply to more. I didn't interview at more. Like this was the one place and it was basically dropped in my lap. So this place was a Johnson & Johnson subsidiary called Depew. I accepted it sight unseen, making $35,000 a year out of college. I didn't factor in cost of living. I didn't factor in growth trajectory. I didn't factor in anything. I was just happy to have a job offer. So I take this thing and right off the bat, my cost of living, my expenses pushed me to the point where I have to take on a bunch of debt just to get by. So I racked up $15,000 of credit card debt in the first 3 months of graduating. And on top of that, I had a horrible boss. Like my boss, every day I showed up to work, I was told I wasn't good enough. I wasn't getting it. I didn't have a future. And it was miserable. Like everything about this was soul crushing. So I knew I needed to make a change. And at the time, this was back in 2013. At the time, this was when, you know, tech was sort of in the golden age. You know, all these companies, Facebook was hitting its stride, Uber was hitting its stride. We didn't see a lot of the issues that have kind of come to light in the tech space since, which is not necessarily not a reason to work in this space, but truly this was like the golden era at that time. So that's what I set my sights on. I said, I'm going to work at Google or Microsoft or Facebook or a similar company. And I'm just imagining like what was going on in the heads of like my parents and my career counselors and like anybody I told this to, because they're looking at this. They're like, okay, you have horrible grades, you have an irrelevant degree, you have a job in medicine, but you're going to work at Google. Okay, like good luck. Let's see how that goes. But they were kind enough to give me some advice. And essentially what they told me to do is what we're all told to do. And that's tweak your resume, tweak your cover letter, apply for jobs online, and basically cross your fingers and wait. And if that doesn't work, you just need to apply for more jobs. Like the phrase that I kept hearing was that this is a numbers game. Like you just have to put a bunch of stuff out there and eventually something will come back. So I took that to heart. And the first month I went out and I applied for 100 jobs. I didn't hear anything back. And I set my sights high. You know, I applied to Google, I applied to Apple and Facebook and all these companies, and I didn't hear anything back. So I went to all the folks that I'd gone to previously, my family, my career counselors, my friends, and I was like, what gives, guys? Like you told me that this was the process. And I did this 100 times and nothing happened. So, you know, what's wrong? What am I doing wrong? What's wrong with this process? How can I fix it? And the frustrating thing was they basically told me exactly this. You just haven't applied to enough jobs yet. You need to get out there and apply to more. And that didn't really make sense to me because if you do something 100 times, in most cases, you should get like at least one result. You know, we'd hope. Otherwise, it's kind of demoralizing, which is what this can be sometimes. But I said, okay, you know, you are the people that I trust. You're the people I've always gone to for advice. So I'm going to double down on this. I'm going to apply to 200 jobs over the next month, and we're going to see what happens. But if this doesn't work, I need to change my approach. So that's exactly what happened. I applied to 200 more jobs. And basically, when all was said and done, I got 5 interviews, which were pretty much all from family, friends, or Wake Forest, where I went to university, connections. None of them were from online applications, and they were all sort of pity interviews. They all ended with, you know, you're really nice, Austin, we like you, but we have people with real experience, so we have to go with them, sorry. That basically led to 0 offers, and I was stuck. I didn't know what to do because I had all these people who I trusted and have always gone to for advice. And I see Michael from NC State here, I love it. I went to all these people for advice for my whole life, and they're the ones telling me like, this is the way. And they're the people I've always trusted. So I didn't know what to do. And around the same time, I had a coffee chat scheduled with one of, or an alumni from Wake Forest. And I went to meet him, and he basically told me he worked at Uber at the time. And I was really curious to know, you know, how he made it in there. And he basically told me, you know, Austin, you're taking advice from all the wrong people. Like, yes, these are the people who have helped you, you know, along the way, but none of them have worked at Google or Microsoft or any of these companies you want to work at. And none of them have done that, you know, coming from a non-traditional background like yours. So if you want to take it, or if you want to, you know, make this happen, you need to go out there and take advice from people who already have what you want. So maybe not necessarily like Bill Gates or Russell Wilson, but going out there and finding people who had made this happen for themselves, who had a similar background. So I was really energized by that talk. And I was really excited to try this new approach because online apps were not working for me. And I was more than happy to dump them and get rid of this. So what I did was run home and make a list of my dream job criteria. And they were essentially to be working for a leading tech company like a Google or a Microsoft, et cetera, to be living in a major city like a New York or a Los Angeles, to have the flexibility to work kind of from wherever and when I needed to. I wanted my boss and my team to be focused on my outputs, not necessarily the amount of hours that my butt was in the chair. I wanted to be making six figures, and I wanted to be doing this by the time I was 26. So I was 21 at the time, and I didn't want to wait forever for this to come to fruition. So I took all these criteria and I went to LinkedIn, and I found as many people as I possibly could that fit these criteria. And I emailed every single one of them. And I basically said, how did you do this? And many of them were kind enough to talk to me. So I got about 20 or 30 of them on the phone, and I talked to each one, and I looked for common threads, and I looked for specific strategies that I could kind of cherry pick and leverage that I felt like played to my strengths. So what I found was, through all of these people who were working in these jobs who matched all my criteria, they had two things in common. The first was that, bar none, every single person had gotten a referral into the job that they had. None of them had submitted an online application that led to the job that they were currently in. And second, a lot of them found a creative way to essentially illustrate their value. And I'm so happy that we're sort of a marketing focused audience here, because marketing lends itself really, really well to this tactic that we're going to use in terms of value illustration. But these people had found some creative way to showcase their value. They didn't just rely on a resume. They didn't just rely on a cover letter. So I took those two things and I said, okay, I'm gonna use these as the foundation, and I'm gonna build a new system around it. I'm going to essentially make it my mission to tear apart the hiring process and understand how it works from A to Z. And I'm gonna learn exactly what to do and what not to do, so that I can be super effective and not just get in the door anywhere, but actually pick and choose where I land jobs, because I want to be in control of my career. I want to be sure that I'm working for a place that I'm excited about, that's going to make me happy, that's, checking these criteria. So I spent a little while doing that. 2013 is when I graduated from college. I spent, about 3-4 months trying to figure this stuff out before I had that coffee chat. And then I kicked things into high gear. And essentially over the next year or so, I really tested this out across tons of companies. I totally blew up my focus on tech and specifically advertising and marketing. And I said, look, I'm just going to try and get as much information as I can. I'm going to apply to as many companies as I possibly can. I'm just going to try and collect data points that I can use to test out my strategies and my theories. And so essentially what happened was, as I got started, I failed a lot. I got rejected a lot. I found a lot of stuff that didn't work. But through that, and through, reflecting on what I did and analyzing it, I basically found what did work. And, that took a long time. But by the end of it, I had this system that I could implement, and I could say, okay, I want to work at this specific company. Here are the people that I need to build relationships with. Let me go reach out to them. Let me build a relationship, and then let me turn that into a referral. And so that's exactly what I did. And you can see this red line. The number of interviews I went on significantly dropped in 2015, but the caliber of company that I was interviewing at went through the roof. So instead of just interviewing at some random company that decided to take a chance on me, I'm getting in the door at Google. I'm getting in the door at Twitter. I'm getting in the door at Microsoft and a bunch of these other places. So this system is the one that we're going to walk through today. And essentially, we're going to go step by step, and it's going to be super actionable. So you're going to walk away from this knowing exactly what to do moving forward, so that you can essentially replicate these results for yourself. Now, I think one thing that's important to note is, I talk about applying for jobs, or getting in the door for jobs without applying online. And that doesn't mean that you should never, ever apply for a job online. My whole philosophy is that we need to do everything that's in our power and in our control. But the big problem is that a lot of job seekers spend 90% of their time applying for jobs online, and only about 10% of their time networking. And the problem is that when we look at where the hires are made, that data flips. So when you apply online, you only have about a 2% chance of getting in the door. Whereas if you're referred in, referrals make up 40 to 80% of hires, and they're only about 10% of the applicants. So most of us are spending most of our time on a channel that has terrible chances of success. And we spend the least amount of our time on the channel that has the best odds of success. And I think we do that because we're not super comfortable networking. A lot of people tell us that we have to network. Nobody actually shows us how to do it. And that was one of the most frustrating parts for me. Just having this message of networking and getting out there shoved down my throat and nobody actually giving me a plan for how to do that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So essentially, this starts with getting clear on your roles. The first thing that you want to understand is where you want to go. What industry do you want to work in? What job title aligns with where you want to go? And we could spend an entire session digging into figuring out this stuff, right? One of the biggest things I hear from job seekers is that they don't know, what path is right for them. And that's the first step, to figure that out and do that discovery, because the last thing you want to do is go through this whole job search process, which is grueling and brutal and long and not fun, and then end up in a job that you don't like and have to do the whole thing over again. So you need to get really, really clear on where you want to go. And in my case, I wanted to work as an account manager in digital advertising. I wanted to work on Google Ads or another ad tech product, and account management was a good blend of my skills. So that's really what I targeted. Then the next thing I did was get clear on the contacts that I was going to reach out to. So even before this step, we can have a bit of an intermediary where we come up with our role, and then our next step might be coming up with our set of target companies. So, my recommendation is usually in the ballpark of 10 to 15 companies. That's a good mix that allows you to diversify a little bit without putting all of our eggs in one basket, while still being small enough where we can really get laser focused. This process works incredibly well, but it doesn't scale the same way online apps do. So instead of going 100 miles wide and 1 mile deep, where we're just applying to jobs and changing a few things on our resume, every day, we're going to shrink that. And we're basically going to go 1 mile wide and 100 miles deep on a small set of companies that we're super, super excited about. So once you've dialed in your role title, and once you've dialed in those 10 to 15 companies, we're going to move on to our contacts. And as a salesperson, something that I drew a parallel to is the fact that companies will come to me, like Microsoft would come to me and say, hey, Austin, you need to sell X number of Microsoft products or X dollars of Microsoft products this year, or, you're not doing very well at your job and you may have to look for a new one, but they were a little nicer about it. So I had to come up with a plan to do that, right? How do I make sure that I hit my number? And I couldn't just rely on getting lucky. Like, I couldn't rely on essentially what we rely on with online applications. I couldn't just send out a bunch of stuff and hope somebody came back to me. I needed a specific path to success. So what I would do is I would track all of my metrics. I would write out all the steps in the sales process. I would track my success rates through each. And then I would start with how many deals I needed to close. And then I would work my way backwards. And the job search works the exact same way. At the end of the day, the job search is a sales process, and you're the product, right? You're basically selling yourself here. And that means that the sales sort of methodology here plays really, really well with what we're trying to do. And we can actually take back a lot of control and almost statistically predict the amount of inputs we need into this funnel to get the outputs we want, X number of job offers. So the way we do that is by mapping out all the steps in the job search process and assigning success rates to each. And you can actually keep track of your own and get better and more accurate results. But then we can work from the job offer backwards. So let's say that you want 2 job offers, and that's kind of your end goal. You want some options, you want to be able to negotiate. And your success rate from final round interview to offer is 33%. That means we need 6 final round interviews in order to get those 2 offers. And then not every interview we go on is going to result in a final round. We'll probably have some first rounds or some first and seconds that, we get rejected from, or, they move on with somebody else. So let's say that that's also a 33% conversion rate. So that means we need around 18 first round interviews, and you can round this up or down. If you want 15 to 20 phone screens, we'll kind of get you in the ballpark. And these are mostly generated through referrals. That's really what we're going for here. So not everybody we speak to is going to refer us in, right? There's a bit of a buffer. And typically what I find is we need to have in the ballpark of like 30 to 50 relationships to get that referral. I'm hesitant to say conversations because one of the things I think comes up when we talk about networking is sitting down for like a half-hour coffee chat. And there's so many more ways to network and build relationships outside of that. And that can sound really, really intimidating to have to sit down for 30 minutes with 50 people. So that's not the case. We basically need 30 to 50 relationships that we're building either via email or online or maybe face-to-face. Any of that is fair game. So in order to get those, those relationships going, we need to reach out to folks, right? And not everybody that we reach out to is going to respond. So when you start, you're probably going to have like a 10 to 15% response rate. But as you A/B test email templates, as you follow up, as you track your emails, you're going to get better. That rate's going to improve to in the ballpark of about 20 to 30%. So if we assume about 30% and we want to have those 50 conversations, that gets us in the ballpark of around 120 to 150 contacts. So essentially, if we reach out to 120 to 150 people, we're going to have 30 to 50 conversations. That's going to get us 15 to 20 interviews. That's going to result in roughly 6 final rounds and hopefully 2 job offers. Now, all of these rates can be adjusted based on your personal experience, and I'd highly recommend that you track them. I track them throughout my job search. But if you do this, you're going to be able to, for the rest of your career, anytime you want a job search, say, okay, I want a job. Here's how many people that I need to reach out to. And if I send this many emails, I know that I'm putting myself in a really good position to end up with this many offers because I've seen this historically. I have the data behind it. So this is one of the core components of this process. So how do we find these people? Who do we reach out to? Well, LinkedIn is our best friend. And one of the big mistakes that people make when they go through this is that they reach out to the obvious people, right? The folks who are like the, basically like the poster children for the role. So somebody in HR, somebody who's a recruiter. If you want to be a recruiter, that's fine. If you don't, that's probably not going to be the best bang for your buck because you and thousands of other people have the same idea and recruiters' inboxes are slammed. But on top of that, their influence ends once they get you in the door, right? They can get you the interview, but they're not in the room where the final hiring decision is made. So instead, if we flip this on its head and we go for somebody who might be the hiring manager or somebody who might be our peer sitting at the desk next to us, not only can that person refer us in, they can also be in the room where the hiring decision is made, or they can have influence over the people who are in the room where the hiring decision is made. And that's going to be much better bang for our buck. So we can find these people using LinkedIn, and really all we need to do is head to the platform, search for our target job title, and then use the filters to select for our target companies. If you have a target location, that's great. And then you can use the connection filter to see if you already have like a warm connection, if you have a second connection where somebody can introduce you. But this is going to give you a list of people. So again, if I search for account manager, Google, and I filter by New York City, I have a whole bunch of people here that I could potentially reach out to, right? These people are working in the job that I want to work in, at the company I want to work at, in the area where I want to work. So all these people basically already have what I want if we're only taking advice from people who have what we want, right? So what I'm going to do is basically click through each of these people's profiles, and I'm going to look to see, who has an opportunity for me to connect with them. Did somebody go to NC State? So Michael can make that connection. I think we had a UNC in here as well. Yeah. So Angelina went to UNC. Maybe somebody went to UNC. That's a connection point. Maybe somebody has a non-traditional background that we can reach out to them about. Maybe somebody has a personal blog. Whatever it is, if you can find some information that you can use to make the outreach about them, that's where we want to go, right? So basically what we're going to do is add roughly 10 to 15 people at each company to a spreadsheet, to a tracker. So the tracker can look like this. I typically like to capture name, title, email, company, LinkedIn, and then I have some notes, and I also keep track of my follow-up status with them. Have I emailed them? Have I followed up? If so, how many times have they gotten back to me? And this just allows me to keep track of all of the people that are in my Rolodex, if you will. And so when we're thinking about the numbers here, right, we talked about 120 to 150 contacts. We had those 10 to 15 companies. Those are our targets, right? So 10 to 15 people at each of those 10 to 15 companies gets us in the ballpark. So how do we reach out? Well, I typically like to use email over LinkedIn. I find that email gets better end-to-end response rates. We keep a lot of data on the outreach that people in our audience do, people that we work with, people who are in our programs. And email tends to work better for a number of reasons. One, it's ubiquitous. We're all on our emails every single day for the most part because we have our jobs and that's how we do them. LinkedIn, everybody has one. Not everybody's active on it. 2, email's free. Emails cost money. They're really expensive. You usually have to sign up for LinkedIn Premium to get more. Emails, you just send them and they're 100% free. We can also use an email tracker like a yesware.com or HubSpot. I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with, but HubSpot has a great free email tracking tool as well. The email tracker lets us see what's happening on the other side. Did they open the email? How often did they open it? Where did they open it? What device? There's like a lot of data that we can get that's super, super helpful for our purposes. And then just like for those 3 reasons, email just tends to be better. So if we want to reach out to them via email, right, we need their email address. So we have a free tool called mailscoop.io. And essentially all you need to do is come here and plug in the person's first name and last name and a link to their company's website, and Mailscoop will go search for their email. Now, different servers have different restrictions, and it's not always possible to find 100% of the emails 100% of the time, no matter what email lookup tool you use. But this is a great starting point. So you can plug their information in here. If you can find their email, great. If not, you can always use LinkedIn as a backup. It's not 100% one or the other. But then I would go through and I would fill out this sheet 100%. I would try to find the info for all 150 contacts. And then I would go through each one and I would try to find a reason to reach out to each person. So when I talk about that reason, the one thing that we want to avoid at all costs that I see most people doing is using what I call a me mindset. So me mindset is basically when you reach out to somebody and you make an ask that's self-centered, right? You know, hey, Austin, I see you work at Microsoft. I'd love to work there too. Like, can you help me get a job? Can you review my resume? Can you introduce me to X person? And if we think about, you know, the position that we're putting this other person in, it's not a great one, right? Like, we're a total stranger and we're basically asking this person to tell their manager that we're worth tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we'll vouch for their work, even though we've only exchanged one email with this person, right? That typically doesn't work out in most cases. It doesn't scale well. So instead, we need to make it about the other person. And again, anything that you can find, any angle you can find to do that is going to be really, really effective. But there's also a certain way we want to write our emails. So there's a company out there called Boomerang, which has a Gmail plugin, and they basically pumped 40 million emails through their plugin every year. And what they're able to do is track the metrics and the data behind those emails. So they found a couple of things that boost response rates. One, they found that emails written at a 5th grade reading level get the best response rates. So not necessarily writing like a child, but more so using plain, clear, simple, easy to consume and scan language. Adding some positivity in there, you know, a couple exclamation points, hope you're having a great week, hope you're staying safe and healthy. That tends to boost response rates by about 15%. The sweet spot for word count is in the ballpark of around 100 to 125 words. I usually don't see people going on the under there. It's usually the over. I think a lot of people send these massive emails. They feel like they have to explain their entire story to get this person to understand why this connection is so valuable or why they should, you know, offer a referral. In most cases, we want to be short. We want to be concise. Like, people don't want to see a wall of text. They want to understand that you know what they're looking for and that you can add value to them, or you're interesting, or, you know, there's a reason to connect with you. And then finally, using a subjective subject line is it typically leads to better open rates. And we need opens in order to get responses, right? That's the prerequisite. So quick question is one that I use. Quick question gets really, really good open rates. It's worked really well for me. I've never really had a need to change it. So I start with that. And then I basically send this email, which is along the lines of, you know, my name's Austin, here's where I work. You don't have to mention that if you're unemployed, or if you don't feel like mentioning where you work. You can just say, you can skip it. You can say, I was browsing through LinkedIn and I was looking for people who had an extensive background in marketing, or who made the transition from X to Y. If you're looking for people with non-traditional backgrounds like I was, then you could just say, I hope you don't mind me reaching out of the blue. You know, I saw you have extensive experience in this company or in this vertical, and I'm really interested to learn more about that space. I'd love to have the opportunity to run some questions by you and tap into any advice you have. And then at the very bottom, I use what I call an exit clause, which is basically taking the pressure off of the ask. So a lot of people might say, like, thanks in advance, looking forward to connecting, here's my calendar. All of those, our data shows, decreases your response rates. So instead, if you flip that on its head and say, I know your time is valuable. Like, you don't feel like you have to respond in depth or at all. If you do have a couple minutes to chat, I really appreciate it. That tends to swing your response rates in the other direction. So if we send an email like this, we're probably going to get a lot of responses, or at least, you know, in the 20 to 30% range, especially if we're following up and we're using the tracker. Now, one thing I would recommend doing is specifically A/B testing templates. So something that I did was, we had 150 contacts. I would send a template to about 15 to 20 people. I would have 3 templates to start that all took different angles and were kind of fundamentally different language-wise. And after 20 emails through each, I would delete the worst performing one, and then I would write a new one, and I would basically keep tracking those metrics. And so over time, I'm basically A/B testing every aspect of my email. I ended up emailing a lot more than 150 people during my search, so I had a larger sample size. But I whittled it down to templates that I knew worked really well in different situations because I had that data. So I definitely recommend tracking things here. Then what you're gonna end up doing is getting on the phone with these people. And so the biggest thing that we want to do when we get on the phone with them is we want to essentially understand more about what matters to them. So we want to open it up and we want to ask them, to tell their story. We want to get them warmed up. And that is the best place to start, just repeating the reason you reached out to them. I saw you had this extensive experience. I'd love to learn more about your story. But then we want to transition it into what they're doing now. What's their biggest challenge? What initiatives are upcoming for their team or for them personally? What are their personal goals and ambitions? And we want to get as much info as we can about these things. We want to understand how we can add value to them. But this is just scratching the surface. This is sort of the lead in. So after the call, what we're going to do is actually get out there and research the stuff they talked about. So it could be that problem, it could be the challenge, it could be the initiative. We're going to go do a bunch of research, both on them and on their company. And we're going to try to understand, how can we add value to this person? So there's a couple of ways to do this. I think when we talk about research, a lot of folks think about, let me read the website, the about page, the mission statement. Maybe I'll read a couple of articles. Maybe I'll hit their social media. We want to go a little bit deeper than that. So one of the ways I love to research public companies is listening to their earnings calls. So the earnings call is essentially just a call that's publicly available. It happens on a quarterly basis, and the company is essentially responsible for sharing what's going on with shareholders. They're telling people what's going well, what's not going well, their plans to either capitalize on the momentum or right the ship over the next couple of months. And these are all publicly available. So you can easily find them by typing in the company's name and then investor relations. And what you're looking for is like this events and presentations link right here. It's going to be different for different companies. You may have to do like a little bit of sleuthing, but eventually you'll find the webcast. And sometimes it's audio only. Sometimes there's a video. Usually there's a deck that's associated with it. Usually there's a transcript. And so that's essentially a ton of information that's going to get us started. So I see Jessica mentioning super small companies. I'm going to give you some ways to research super small companies as well in just a second. But if you're able to do this, if the company you're targeting is a public company, this is one of the best places to start because it gives us that holistic view and it's a great jumping off point. So again, for public companies here, and Rachel will cover nonprofits as well. So for public companies, again, another great resource is Seeking Alpha. So I love Seeking Alpha because we can see that there's 2 columns here. There's news and there's analysis. So the news is basically what's going on, right? It's objective stuff. And it's essentially, here's what's happening at the company. But the analysis are a lot of these financial analysts who come in and they essentially say, okay, here's the news, but here's what we have to say about it. And they're going to tell you why Microsoft stock is going to continue growing, or they're going to tell you why it's going to tank over the next couple of months. And you can use that to inform your own opinion, but also you can use that to understand what other opinions are out there. So now you can ask better questions. When you're in an interview or when you're creating a project that we're going to talk about or whatever it is, you can come to the table with a question. Instead of saying like, what's a day in your life like here? You can say something like, hey, I saw that this product or initiative is being released. And I know, from listening to a keynote with your CEO, they said X, Y, and Z. But the analysts think that it's not going to work for ABC reasons. How are you dealing with ABC? And that question is so much more effective because it shows that you've done your research. So then those are the 2 things that are helpful for public companies. The rest of these are for both private and public, big and small. So listening to interviews is something that I absolutely love to do. Whenever you can get a founder or an executive level person, whether it's C-level, VP, anybody who's aligned to the segment of the business you're looking to get into, if we can get them talking for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes on, a keynote speech, on an interview, on a podcast, we're going to learn so much because one, we hear what's going on like straight from the horse's mouth, if you will. On top of that, they're going to share some nuggets, right? These are, yes, they prepare for these, but a lot of this is happening off the cuff in the moment. And they're going to share some nuggets that may have been edited out of a Forbes article or, a New York Times article or whatever it is. And what I try to do is listen to as many interviews with as many executives as I can. The cool part about YouTube and podcasts, you can actually speed up the playback. So I listen to them at like 1.5 to 2x. That's not for everybody, but it can let you get through a lot of interviews a lot faster. So this is one of my favorite ways to research any kind of company that you're looking to get into. Social media is another good one. And this really can be expanded into customer research. So can we go look at the comments that are happening on these social posts? Can we actually go survey some of their customers? When we talk about marketing, a big part of great marketing is understanding your customer. And a lot of that happens through customer surveys, customer calls, discovery calls. Can we go do that type of thing for these specific companies? And then can we go find communities? Is there a Slack channel? Is there a subreddit? Is there a forum where people who are using these products or people who are in the target market, where those people are hanging out? And can we go leverage some data, some information from there? And then finally, can we go see if we can use the product ourselves, especially if this is a super small company, especially if they're in tech or they have a product that's widely available. Can you go purchase it? Can you get your hands on it? Can you use it yourself? All this stuff is a great way to understand, what's going on with this company, where they're looking to go. And then the last thing I would say is, can you do a competitive analysis? Like, can you look at what their competitors are doing versus what they're doing? And can you use that to identify gaps? Can we look at where their traffic is coming from? Can we look at where their sales are coming from? Can we look at what's working versus what's not? All that is going to play into the silver bullet, essentially, of this job search strategy. And that is essentially creating a deliverable that proves out your value. So I mentioned at the beginning, one of those core tenets was finding creative ways to illustrate your value. One of the big issues that I saw is, and Chris mentioned a great one, spyfu.com is fantastic. Ubersuggest is another great one for this stuff. Similarweb.com is another good one for doing company research. But Christopher, thank you for calling that out. And then Esther, Jenna has a great question that maybe we can save for the end, because I think that's one that we should answer. But at the beginning, I talked about finding creative ways to illustrate your value. So one of the big problems with the job search now is that, we use a resume, and a resume it's a marketing document, it's a sales document, but it's focused on all the wrong things. Great marketing, great sales, it's focused on the customer, it's focused on the prospect, it's talking to them, showing basically what benefit we can provide to them. The problem with the resume is it's only focused on us, and it's only focused on our past. There's no way for us to really bridge the gap there. On top of that, we're all like human beings where we have, personalities, and we have experiences and history and value. And it's really hard to convey all that in an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So instead, how can we step out of that box and find another way to prove our value? So I call this a value validation project. And a VVP is essentially a deliverable that aims to illustrate your value in your own language on your own terms. So this could be a deck that you put together. This could be a blog post that you wrote with some information. It could be a white paper that you create with insights. There's so many different ways to create something like this. And what we'll do is actually go through a couple of examples here. So there's one article, and if you run a search for the top line here, my friends hate SoundCloud iOS, so I redesigned it for them. If you run that through Google or whatever search engine, this article should show up right at the top, and it's worth a read. But basically what Kelly did here, she's a UX designer, and she is really big into music. So she likes listening to music. She hated the way the SoundCloud app served up music to its users. So what she did was essentially dove in, took this problem head on, and redesigned the entire app from the ground up. So she started by doing market research. Who's a typical listener on SoundCloud? She created marketing personas for those listeners. She actually went out and surveyed people who use the app now and also use competitive apps like Spotify or Tidal or whatever. Then she consolidated all those pain points. She went and did some more UX research. She actually built out a prototype for the new app. And so she's essentially letting us into her brain, her thought process, like, here's a problem, here's exactly how I'll solve it for you. Here's the level of detail I go to. Here's how I think about it. And this is such a better way to showcase the value that she brings to the table, right? If she wanted a job at SoundCloud and showed up with something like this, This is so much more effective than a resume. And I definitely encourage you to go read the article. I'll try and link it up before the end of the conversation here. But again, this is so much more clear than anything that we would be able to write on a resume. The next one here is one of my favorites. So Nina was, she's from the Middle East, and she moved to California, and she wanted to work at Airbnb. So at the time, Airbnb was not in the Middle East, but Nina was going the traditional route. So she's applying online, she's sending emails, she's not getting any bites, she doesn't know what else to do. And so basically she asked herself, am I doing everything I could possibly do to get a job at Airbnb? And her answer was no. So she ended up doing some market research on basically the opportunity in the Middle East. She leveraged a lot of her existing knowledge. She also leveraged a lot of industry knowledge. Esther, thank you so much for linking the article. I appreciate you. And she basically put together this whole website. So we'll actually just jump out here. And if you go to ninaforairbnb.com, I think you guys may not be able to see my screen. So let me do this whole thing again. Here we go. So here's Nina's website. And she basically talks about, okay, Airbnb is almost taking over the world, but there's no penetration in the Middle East. So she's serving up, here's how many listings are in these cities. Here's how much they cost per night. Here's how many reviews per listing. And then she goes a step further and she talks about, why the Middle East is a great travel market. It's a millennial melting pot. It's a developing ecosystem. Here's how they attract global tourism. They have high internet penetration. So people who are, the type of people who use Airbnb and have the ability to do that are here. So she makes a case and she backs it up with real numbers. And then she talks about where to start. So she's telling people, which specific markets, which specific cities to start in. Again, she's backing it up with data. And this is all on a web page that is designed specifically like Nina for Airbnb is, it's totally marketed right at Airbnb. So she could do a couple of things here. She could email this to the people, her contacts at Airbnb, and see if she gets a response. She actually went for total broke. And what she did was she tweeted it at Airbnb's founder, Brian Chesky. And she ended up getting a tweet back. He actually read the whole thing. And then she was in the door for an interview. So this is the type of stuff that we're talking about with the value validation project. How can we go a step further to create something that's really, really valuable? So I know we're running short on time. So that's basically the system in a nutshell. Can we start by identifying 10 to 15 target companies that we really are excited about, that we're really going to invest in, instead of just throwing random applications at whatever company seems like, they may or may not be interesting to us. And then once we have those 10 to 15 companies, can we go find 10 to 15 contacts who aren't just recruiters, aren't just people in HR, but who actually will be in the room where the hiring decision is made, who'll actually have some influence here? Can we really dial into those folks? And then how can we reach out to them? Can we A/B test some email templates? How can we make it about them? How can we research them to understand what's important to them, what they'd be excited to respond to? And then if we email that full volume of people, we'll get our 30 or so conversations. In those conversations, we're working to understand more about their team's pain points, what's important to them, what upcoming initiatives are going on. And then after that call, we're going and doing a ton of research on these companies and on these people and on these problems and initiatives. And we're thinking about, okay, how can I take my background and how can I come up with some ideas to help solve these problems? And then how can I put together something that makes that crystal clear, not just relying on a resume, not just relying on a cover letter, but actually creating something that I feel like accurately portrays my value. And if you do that, if you go through that process, one, you're not going to have to submit nearly as many online applications. You can still apply for those jobs if you want, but your value is going to be so much more clear, and you're going to have a champion inside of these companies who's really willing to go to bat for you. And the combination of those two things are, one, going to get you in the door, and two, they're going to help you. That VVP is going to help you stand head and shoulders above any of the other candidates that are coming in for the job, because nobody else is doing this kind of thing. So with that said, I know we had some questions in the chat, and I'll pull up the chat window again, but if you all have any questions that you want to add, definitely feel free to drop them in the chat now. But I think Jenna had a question that I wanted to answer. And so Jenna, I don't know if you want to unmute and ask your question. I have it in the chat here, but would be happy to talk to you one-on-one too, if you want.
Hi, yeah.
Hey.
So basically my question was, do you recommend doing all of this in addition to applying to a position, or would it be kind of, I don't know, a little bit counteractive, because then you're going in too deep and getting in with the HR people, and then that might be a little bit of a conflict of interest? Because I've been applying to a lot of internships and I got into second rounds, but I haven't heard anything. So I've been reaching out to people to try to see if there's what's going on with the situation, but I don't know what's appropriate.
Yeah, for sure. So basically what I'd recommend is like in that step between finding your target companies and roles and building out your contacts, you can definitely apply for these roles online. And we actually have a couple of tools that are 100% free that'll help you like build a resume. We have a resume scanner. So you upload your resume on one side and the job description on another, and it'll actually give you a score and tell you how well you match up, and it'll show you what you need to improve. And the whole goal of creating these tools was to make it easier to apply online and have you spend less time doing that. So, I talk about that split, right? 10% of your time focused on those online apps, 90% focused on building relationships and the stuff we talked about today. So essentially, what we want to do is once we have our target companies, if there's a role open at one of those target companies that you're pumped about, like, yes, get your application in the door, because you never know what could happen. Like you still may get that connection point. But usually, most times we won't hear anything back, or we might be rejected, and that's totally fine. You can still go build relationships either way, even if you're rejected. Google rejected me like 10 times before I finally got in the door for the interview that led to the offer stage. And so by no means is a rejection like the end of the line, but I always apply first just to get my application in, and then I go and start building relationships afterwards. Because typically what ends up happening is if I get somebody who's willing to refer me and the application's in, they can just bump it to the top of the stack. And if nothing happened with the application or I got rejected, they can just send my resume directly to the hiring manager.
Right. Yeah, that was my thought process going into that, because I wanted to try to boost my name in the whole process if I got into the second round, and haven't heard, but I didn't want to breach any kind of situation that might be deemed inappropriate after applying. So that's good to know.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great question. And I wanted to make sure we got to it. So thank you for asking.
Thanks.
Awesome. So Jennifer, I just saw your question come in about Zoom, and this one is like a personal thing for me because I am very zoomed out at this point. So I'd love if you want to unmute and ask your question out loud, we can talk through it.
Yeah, for sure. I just asked, is there an alternative to picking someone's brain besides Zoom during this pandemic that still sounds pretty personal? Because I know I'm taking grad school classes on Zoom. I know many people are on Zoom the entire workday. People are zoomed out, but I don't necessarily just want to go through email and not have that personal touch. I know I've spoken previously with professors about Zoom coffee dates or something to pick someone's brain, but is there an alternative?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually just had a meeting with somebody where I put my phone number in and they like didn't show up for like 10 minutes and they were like, sorry, I couldn't find the Zoom link. And I'm like, guys, it's been 10 months. Like we still all have phones. Like we can do this. This hasn't like disappeared. So I always push people to phones, and that's totally something that you can do. I would like, this is like your life, right? And like, if you're going to reach out to somebody and you want to connect with them and you feel like you're better off doing phone, like recommend the phone. Literally every person I've recommended phone to or a phone call to has been like, thank you. Like, yes, I would love to do a phone call instead of a Zoom. But it doesn't even have to happen over the phone. Like you can build relationships over email and still have the personal touch. And I think that the biggest mistake or a misconception that people have is that we feel like a relationship needs to be built in like the half-hour window that we have for that call. And really the best relationships that we have are built in small layers. Like if we think of any relationship in our lives, it's not like one massive leap. It's literally one layer at a time. So one of the things that I like to use is something that I call the advice triangle. So basically the advice triangle is where I go to you and I say, let's say that I'm looking for a job in, user experience and I'm coming from account management or whatever. And this is a total hypothetical. Maybe you're in user experience. So I email you and I say, hey, Jennifer, I was looking for people in UX and, your background really stood out to me for X, Y, and Z reasons. I just wanted to like tap into your knowledge. It's literally just choosing between A or B. It should take less than 30 seconds of your time. In order for me to be a stronger candidate, would you recommend that I do A or would you recommend that I do B? You know, this course or that book, you know, this book or that certification. And then just say, thanks for your time. And so we're doing a couple of things here. We're making it super easy for them to answer. Like I want them to be able to answer in less than 30 seconds. And then we're getting an actionable step. So what we do is we then go take action, right? We read that book, we take that course, take that certification. Then we go back to them and we say, you know, hey, thanks so much. I read that book or I took that course and I learned X, Y, and Z things. Thank you. What's next? What's the next piece of advice? And so now we're not only illustrating that, you know, we value what they had to say and we listen, but we're also the type of person who's not afraid to roll up our sleeves. So what's going to happen? They're probably going to give us better advice. And now we're in this cycle of every time you ask for advice, take action, report back, we're building that relationship. We're creating layers, right? And eventually we'll get to the point where we can make the ask that we want. The other thing is like, can we find people who are active online? Like, are people active on social media? And if so, like, can we support them through comments and likes and things like that? Can we go find, do they have a personal website? Have they written an article? Can we give them a +1? I wrote a post here. I'll just drop it in the chat here. It's hard to sum up in like a 2-minute question answer, but it's really about getting creative and thinking about, okay, you know, what is this person, like, what do they care about? Like what matters to them? If they're posting content, they care about people seeing that content. You know, if they're offering advice, they care about people taking that advice. So if we put ourselves in their shoes and say like, what would this person be excited to hear? Would it be their impressive experience? Would it be the post that they share? Would it be this content that they wrote? If we can tap into that and make it about them, and then build a relationship in a couple of small layers versus trying to make that big leap in one phone call, one, that tends to be more effective, but two, it tends to be more comfortable. Like I'd much rather do that over a series of emails where I can think about what I'm saying and doing and all that versus being put on the spot with a stranger for 30 minutes. So I actually find it to be more effective, but I just dropped the link in the chat. I would read through a couple of the examples in there, and I think that should give you a feel for how to make that happen.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. No problem. Okay, so we have several questions here. So I'll give it to the next person who unmutes and asks. We can take your question because I'm not sure which one to pick here. Anyone? I guess I could pick. Okay, so I saw one about VVPs. Maleo, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. I hope that I did. Do you want to unmute and talk about the VVP piece or your question?
Sure. I've, thought about creating something like this. My hesitation has always been about the blind spots of creating something and presenting it to a company without knowing the ins and outs of how they operate. I know just from my own experience working that there sometimes seems like a simple solution. There might be things that are happening internally that are preventing a particular solution from being executed. And so I know if someone from the outside said, hey, this is the solution to your problems, and they present it to me, it might be something that I've already thought of, something that's completely impractical. And unfortunately, I might think that this person was a little naive and maybe not fit for the role, even though that's not really fair considering their limited knowledge about what's going on in the company. So my question for you is there any kind of tried and true approach to this to make it seem, to kind of circumvent any issues like that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'd say two things here. The first is that people know that and people understand you're not an employee yet, right? So you don't have all the information, you don't have all the access, all the data, all that good stuff. And so really what it comes down to in the job search is like, who wants it more, right? So who really is going to like make it happen in this role? And typically, if we think about great hires, like sometimes great hires are the ones who like have those intangibles, right? Like they're hungry to learn, they're super driven and motivated, they're fast learners, they're willing to go seek out information to solve problems. It's not always necessarily the person who has the most experience that is going to be the best employee. And so companies do look for those intangibles. But the problem is the current process just doesn't have an easy way for us to identify that. It's really hard to see that stuff on a resume, especially when we're so worried about like, you know, is this stupid applicant tracking system going to like delete my resume or whatever else? Or, you know, should I use this color or that color? Is it, you know, we overthink the resume, and it's just not a good, you know, basically medium for that. So one of the big reasons the value validation project helps isn't necessarily because like you have a game-changing business idea. It's simply because like you have shown that you care enough about this role to have taken the time to go dig all this stuff up. That's really like half the value of the project. And great managers, great teams, they see that. They understand that you don't have all the inside info. And so as a hiring manager, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, basically like, these ideas are awesome. Like, yes, this one won't work for X reason, and we've already tried that one, but I'm just so pumped that this person took the time to come up with all these ideas. I can't wait to see what they come up with when they actually have all the information available to them. And so that's what a great hiring manager is thinking of. So essentially that's the first part. But the other thing is, can we do enough research to identify a great angle? Because sometimes, you know, if we've come up with an idea that's really, really good, maybe they're working on it, maybe they thought of it. You know, if that person had already thought of an idea and we bring up that idea, even if it's not something that's feasible for a reason we're not aware of, it's the same idea this person had. So there's a little bit of familiarity there. And a lot of times there are ideas that these don't have to be revolutionary. Like sometimes it's as simple as like, I did a competitive analysis and like these guys are doing webinars and you're not, and I can see like 60% of their traffic is coming from webinars. So like, here are a couple of steps to get started. And sometimes it's as simple as just like calling out something that's fairly obvious from the outside. So I would worry less about like, if somebody came to you and was like, wow, you put together this amazing project and you probably spent hours on this and it looks really good. It's really well designed, but your idea doesn't work because you don't have all the right information. So like, you suck and you're done. Like, get out of here. You're rejected. That's not really somebody that I'd want to work for. I don't think they would really see the value in the work that I was going to be putting in if I showed up there. Whereas the right person is gonna say what we talked about before. I see the level of effort that went in here. This person clearly wants this job. I can't wait to see what they bring to the table when we actually give them access to all the information. Does that help?
Yeah, it was super helpful. I appreciate it. Very helpful.
Cool.
Thank you so much for this inspiring presentation and for sharing your strategies to land jobs at top companies. And thank you all of the attendees. I hope that you have learned some best practices for landing an interview or job without applying online. We will send you tomorrow the post-event survey. So I hope that you can share your feedback so we can keep improving our events. And don't forget to register for our next webinar, Rethinking Marketing in 2021, how marketers can adapt their client relationship strategies. Thank you all very much for joining today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. We'll talk to you soon.